So we're starting Unit 2 today. So this is Unit 2, Part 1, Lesson 1. The theme of the unit is American growth and change in an era of extremes. So we started this unit out by you guys doing some basic background reading on the economic way of thinking when looking at historical events. Some basics about like what economics are, the idea that economics are the science of choice, and that there are consequences. What we're going to look at today in the starting of the actual notes is the extremes of politics. And specifically, you, if you have not done so already, will encounter the terms left and right politically. So we're going to do a really super generalized intro to what left and right mean politically. So there are two ways of looking at it: linear view and the horseshoe model. And we're going to cover each of these briefly. So I gave you these two handouts. They are available on the Google Classroom community. So the linear view. The linear view says that political extremes fall on a line. They go from the left side of the line to the right side of the line. And that the center of the line are what are called the moderates. The moderates are what most people probably would think they would like to be. Moderates are generally okay with people. They are willing to listen to both sides. They're willing to work for compromise. They like some things on this side, they like some things on this side, but they're not sold on either one of them. To the left of the moderate is the liberal. For the left in general, for liberals, the big issue is tolerance and equity. Another way of looking at it is fairness. What would that mean? For the liberal, it's not fair that some people have more money than other people. It's not fair that some people have better access to things. It's not fair that some groups have more rights and privileges than others. It's not fair that some people have to work really hard and they don't show anything for it. It's not fair that some people don't pay enough taxes. Issues of fairness. The problem comes in with what you define as fair. Fair is a matter of opinion. The liberals will say that you must accept, you as in the right, must accept the liberal views on things. You must accept us. You must tolerate us. But their version of toleration is acceptance and support, or maybe even belief in what we believe and preach. Now, to the left of the liberals are the socialists. Socialists are people who believe that the only way to really achieve fairness is for the government to enforce fairness. Example, let's use the analogy of a couple of cows. In socialism, you have two cows. Your neighbor has no cow. You should give one cow to your neighbor so that each of you have equal numbers of cows. If you choose not to do that, the government will take away one cow and give it to your neighbor. Socialism is about the idea that the government creates fairness and toleration through taking away from those who have too much and giving it to those who have not enough. Sort of like the Robin Hood approach. Now, if we go even one step further, you have over here group or party dictatorship. So, what exactly does that mean? That means that eventually groups of people will band together and they will take over. This results in total and complete government. A better way to look at this, and a better term for both of these ideas, is on the extreme left what is generally considered traditional hardcore Marxism. Let's just go over here and switch to blue. Now, socialism is Marxist, but it's not hardcore enough for the full left. The full left, which can be seen in forms of government like communism, you have two cows. The government takes both of them away and gives milk to you based on what you need. In communism, the government controls everything. Now, how does that differ from fascism or Nazism? Because technically, Nazis are not fascists. There's a difference, and we'll talk about that later. How it differs in fascism is this. Let's go back to our two cows. You have two cows. The government takes them both away. The government then asks you if you like the government and do you support it. If you say yes, the government gives you your cows back, and you can keep them so long as you like the government and the government likes you. If you say no, the government kills you or puts you in a camp. So, in both cases, there is a group or party dictatorship. Now, it's important to understand that while these forms of government may have a leader, the, the government and the country continues after that leader's death. This would be why, for example, after the death of Vladimir Lenin, Stalin took over. After the death of Joseph Stalin, Khrushchev takes over. Communism continues under them because it's all about the party or the group, not the individual. Most people don't realize this. The Nazi Party existed before Hitler. Hitler came in, became the person in charge, but there were a couple of attempts to remove him by the party. So the party still exists independent of who's the leader. So this is the left in a very, very simplified form. Okay. Now, let's go over here to clear that, and let's go over here to the political right. So to the immediate right of the moderate, you have the conservative. Whereas the liberal is all about tolerance, fairness, and equity, the conservative is all about freedom. For the conservative, it is about the individual's freedom that is the most important. Conservatives value things like patriotism, that's love of one's country, faith, belief in God, the love of one's family, and one's own personal rights and responsibilities. The freedom to work and to work hard for what you have that you can keep. To the right of conservatives are libertarians. They are people who are pretty much, they are the your truth people. That's your truth. This is my truth. So long as your truth doesn't interfere with my truth, it's okay. But libertarian, like your truth, my truth, is all about individual freedom and individualism. Conservatives believe in tolerance in the classical sense of what the word means, as in, I don't like you, but I put up with you. Libertarians are just like, dude, believe whatever you want, just don't let it get in my way. Hardcore libertarians don't even believe that people should have intellectual property rights like patents or things like that, because that's the government. The left wants bigger, more government. The right wants less and less government until we reach the extreme right, which is the anarchist. There should be no government whatsoever. It's total freedom. The problem with this is that eventually total freedom leads to mob rule. That means that just it's violence, every man for himself, fighting, beating, killing, looting, whatever it is. In order to eventually stop that, on the extreme right, one person will emerge as the warlord or the dictator because they are strong enough to provide protection and maintain order. They will then become the leader. Now, it's important to realize that on both extremes, there's going to be an army. In this case, the group has the army. In this case, the individual gets the army. In both cases, too, both extremes reject religion. Liberals may be religious people, but they believe maybe in freedom of worship rather than freedom of religion. Remember, freedom of worship is the idea of you can go to church, temple, mosque, synagogue, whatever you want, but what you believe stays there. Freedom of religion is you're allowed to practice those beliefs in everyday life. Conservatives are all about freedoms of religion. Libertarians, if you believe in God, that's fine. If you don't, that's fine too. The further you go on both ends, in communism, in fascism, in Marxism in general, the government, the group, becomes God. There is no God except for the group. In extreme right anarchy, the individual becomes God. So if you notice, there's some similarities between both sides here, which leads us to our next issue, which is the horseshoe theory. In the horseshoe theory, again, you have the moderates in the center. They are willing to compromise. They're willing to see both sides. They may drift a little bit this way on some issues. They may drift a little bit this way on other issues. So you still have the center. As you go further away on this end, you've got the on this end, I don't know what the heck that was. A strange noise popping in my head. Let me see if I can go back over that. I don't know where my okay. On this end right here, you've got the liberal. We drift further down, you got the socialist. And over here, you have the hard Marxists. Socialism is Marxist. It's just a soft Marxism. It's a kindler, gentler Marxism. Sorry, this is taking a while. I need a pen on or somewhere. Okay. Over here, you drift to the right of the center, and you have conservatives. Oh, further right, you got the libertarians. I'm not going to spell it out because it's way too long here. And on the extreme right, you have the anarchists. Notice that as you do this, though, these two sides become closer and closer to each other. Why? Because they have more in common with each other than they do with the center. They drift closer and closer, and they hate each other. Why? Because they see too much of the other in it. This one is the group over here. This is group tyranny. This one here is the individual as tyrant. So, the basics, the horseshoe theory and the line theory. I put this out there for you to understand realistically several things. Number one, uh, whatever it is that you personally find explains things better is fine. There are arguments to be made on both ends that each of them has their merits as to why one is better than the other. Okay. Um, Largely because there's a lot of people who like there are qualities of this that kind of drift this way and whatever else, however you want to assign that. Okay. But if it makes sense to you that they're on opposite ends of an extreme for each of them, that's fine. If it makes more sense that because of this sort of drift, they're actually closer to each other, that works too. Personally, I think the horseshoe explanation is better. Not everybody does. Okay. But that's the political extremes. So, what else are we looking at for political extremes? Okay. Well, in general, the left is about social anarchy. What that means is you have groups who oppose government. Liberal and progressive thought is about equity and fairness and tolerance. It relies on something called critical theory. Under critical theory, there are victim groups versus the oppressors. There are some kind of a victim group, whether that's an economic victim group. In classical leftist thought, it's all about money. The victim group is an economic class, the worker. The oppressor is the business owner or the government, or maybe it's a particular ethnic group. The oppressors are the people in power. Violence is good and necessary to fight this oppression. For the liberals and progressives, there will be a group, an elite, who will rise up to lead all the other people in this great new overthrow of the oppressor. The elite do not follow the same rules as everybody else, by the way, because the rules don't apply to the leaders. They only apply to the group. In the extreme, mob violence leads to dictatorship. Totalitarian means total. Groups become so violent that eventually one takes over and it will lead to dictatorship. Now, on the right, you have the issue of the individual leader or anarchist. Hold on. Okay, sorry about that little bounce off there. Something happened there. So you have the individualist anarchist. In the left, groups are are support the idea that there is no central government. There are just groups. These groups cause chaos, whether that group is an economic group, like say workers, or whether it's an ethnic group, like a particular like demographic of an ethnicity or a race group. They cause chaos because it's always groups against oppressors. These groups are the victims, the oppressors are the people in power. Eventually, the victims become the people in power. In the extreme right, it's all about the individual. The individual fights the people in power, it fights the government. Conservatives value liberty and justice. The problem with conservatism, where the left embraces critical theory about victim groups, the right kind of embraces xenophobia. This fear of the other. That's what xenophobia is. It is fear of strangers or fear of the other. It results in paranoia. Everybody's out to get me. Those people, they're looking at me because it's not because like I'm different than them. They're looking at me because they want to target me. Violence becomes justifiable for protection. So you go out armed and prepared because somebody's going to try to get you. And when you see a group of people coming at you who are different than you, it's because they want to get you. So therefore, you can commit violence against them because you're protecting yourself. Never mind that they were just coming over to see if you needed help or to ask directions. They were coming after you. In its own way, conservatism breeds elitism as well, but it's not an elite group of people. It's an elite person. I'm better than you because I'm just better because I don't have your baggage. I don't have your problems. I'm better educated. I'm better I'm better off than you. I'm better trained, however that may be. In the extreme of this one, the individual violence leads to dictatorship. Eventually, one person rises up who's strong enough that other people will follow them, and they will give that person leadership for security and to end the violence. So both of them have the same end results. So we'll talk more about this later. So this is a very oversimplified view of the political left versus the political right. Peace and love.